Welcome to Motion Teaching, where I teach the essential 5% of After Effects for designers and creators. Tutorial 2, Icon Animation. Okay, let's start on the lock. Now, I'm going to do that same thing again that I did for the bell and create a mask for this lock right here so that it stays transparent and that dot in the middle can stay there, but also mask out the locker. I'm just going to change this resolution. There we go. So we'll go back to Illustrator. I'm going to go and select this and then make it transparent. So now we see that. I hit save. Go back. It'll update. There we go. Now we can create a matte for that lock. So I'll do Control Command Y. Make another white solid. Bring it right here. Bring it down right there. Now the nice part is, because this is just a square, I can actually center this solid right here and just scale it with the bounding box to be right there. Yes, I could also use the rectangle shape tool to create a mask of that solid if I wanted to, certainly. Okay, we have that white solid right here. I'm going to call this lock matte. And then what I'm actually going to do is select the locker layer, which is this part right here. If I hide this, and I'm going to select this lock matte for the locker. Now again, it's the opposite, so we want to invert the matte, and there we go. Transparent. It also masks out the locker. If I move the locker up and down, perfect. Okay, great. Now I'm just going to make sure to parent the lock matte right here with the pick whip to the lock as well as the locker. So now if I select the lock and hit R for rotation, everything moves together. Okay, great. So if we go back to the video and watch this lock animation, yeah, it kind of pops up and then like snaps down. So you can see that rotations, anchor point's probably right here in this corner as it rotates. Comes up and then snaps and comes back up. So let's do that. Okay, so we'll start with the lock. I'm also going to change this layer to be orange as well. I can move this down here. Okay. So let's start with the lock. I'm going to hit Y for the anchor point. Move it to be right here. That feels kind of where that it's snapped like that. Yeah. And then we'll just do a simple position and rotation animation. I'm going to move it to be right here. We're going to space out these animations later as we refine this whole composition. We start there. This moves up. That's just kind of where it starts to rotate. So we'll go right here. Like that. And then it comes down. Like that. And then it comes back up to where it started, so I'm just going to copy and paste these keyframes. Not great. Very basic. So the rotation starts a little bit later. Sorry, the rotation starts a little bit earlier, actually. It's not too bad right now. Okay, before I go any further, I gotta bring something up that has always been annoying about After Effects, and for some reason, it's never been fixed. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to be able to control, like I can with rotation, right? Like if I select rotation and I select these keyframes and I hit Easy Ease, I can add these handles and I can move them around any way that I like. And that's really nice. And that adds a lot to the animation already without really even messing with the handles. Now if I go into position, if I select the Y values right here, the green ones, and I do the same thing, there's no handles that show up. I can't control the position values in the same way that I can with the rotation values. This is all I can do. There's no handles to be selected and moved around in position. Now, of course, I can go to the speed graph and mess around with the speed, but I don't want to do that. I want to be able to control these values in the same exact way that I could with rotation, like this. For some reason, you can't do that with position the way that it currently is. What you can do instead is if I select the position parameter right here and I see the animations for X in red and Y in green, if I right click the position right here and select separate dimensions, I now get the X position and the Y position as separate parameters that I can animate. Now, because the lock only goes up and down, I don't need any X animation. You can see right here, the Y is all that I need to really do. If I select the X position, nothing really happens. So what I'm going to do is just hit the stopwatch for the X position animation and delete all the keyframes because I don't need it. I just need the Y position. Now that I have the dimensions separated, I can select these keyframes just like I would with rotation, and there we go. We have handles to mess with. I don't understand why Adobe does this, but this is just a really important thing to know. If you want to control the values of position specifically with handles like this, you've got to do right click and separate dimensions. So now that we have that set up, I can select these keyframes and start to really tweak the position animation in the same exact way that I could with the rotation animation. This is a very important thing to know about After Effects. The separate dimensions trick. Okay, so now that I've done that a little bit, I've just kind of messed with the handles a little bit for the Y position animation. It's starting to get a lot smoother. That's nice. Still want it to kind of snap down faster. So I want actually to move this second keyframe closer to the third keyframe so it snaps faster. See, watch. There we go. So what's happening in the value graph right here is the Y position value is changing. So by going negative, it's actually going up, and then it snaps in the sense that changes values very quickly to go down and then back up. That's great. I'm gonna shift select the rotation animation just to see where the timing is, so you can see how the rotation is not as fast as the position. So I'm gonna move that third keyframe per rotation to match. There we go. That's really nice. I'm going to go back to the Y position. I just can't help myself. It actually is fine. It's almost too easy, and I just need to stop messing with it. It's fine. Okay, that's great. Now the next thing to do is just to animate the locker starting up and then snapping down, which is just a very simple position animation. Now we don't need to separate dimensions for the locker just because it's pretty quick. there's not a lot of finessing that needs to be done. So I'll hit the keyframe right here. This will actually be the final position. So I'm going to move this keyframe down. I'm going to start up like that. So it needs to snap down about right there. There we go. Yeah, it just needs to go right there, really. Okay, that's good. And there it is. That is the lock animation. Next one is the shopping cart. Okay, here we are. Now, the shopping cart has a lot of stuff going on in there that I think is actually really cool, and a lot of really cool tricks to take with you. So if we scrub through this, you can see how the plus sign kind of initiates everything and has it pop off the ground, and then the cart fills up, and then as you see it hit back the ground, it actually bends a little bit. Has a little bit of kind of like springy action before it comes to rest. A ton of life inside this little animation. It's super cool. And the other interesting part about the way the animation works is when this fills up right here, look at the edges. So it's like a hard edge right now, and once it fills up, it becomes rounded. So I have a theory about how to recreate this, and it's going to be a really cool trick with track mats and shape layers, once again, to show you how powerful that process is. And I just kind of love how the plus jumps up like that. I love how the shopping cart pops up in the air, and then it springs down and it bends like that, and it just comes back to where it started. There's a lot of stuff going on in that animation, and I think it's really cool. So let's get started. I'm gonna bring this up a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the composition. Here we are. Okay, so first of all, I want to just get this shopping cart filling up animation figured out first, and then we'll go into the plus sign and the jumping and everything. Okay, the first thing I want to do is create that shopping cart filling up animation that's right here. And the second thing after that is I want to actually cut apart this shopping cart, the top part and the bottom part, so we can animate that bounciness happening right here. So the kind of hinge between those two objects is right here. So this part bounces down, comes back up. So the rotation, the anchor point of this part is right here. So I want to actually have two shopping cart layers, one with the wheels and one with the cart itself. But that's going to come out after we do this quick animation with the track mats and shape layers. Okay, first of all, make sure I have no layer selected, and go to the, not the rectangle tool, but the rounded rectangle tool. And I'll show you what happens. When I click and drag, I get a rectangle, but if I zoom in, you can see the corners are actually rounded. This is really a nice thing to have, because if I go into this shape layer right here that I just created and expand it and go down to the rectangle and the path itself, I can actually change the roundness of this rectangle. And that's really nice. That's obviously can be animated. I can change the position inside the path itself, but I can also change the size. So I could animate this rectangle going like this while also keeping the roundness of the rectangle itself. I'm going to change this color so it's clearer. Just the stroke color. Okay, so this is really nice because you can Just as an aside to show you what this is like, the rectangle path, when it's rounded, you can basically scale it like this while keeping the roundness however you want. So anyway, it's a good thing to know. So I'm actually going to flip this and turn the stroke off. Now this menu up here only shows up when you have this tool selected. If I go back to here, it goes away. So this is the selection tool, shortcut V. But if I go back to this, as long as I have this layer selected, I can change the stroke and the fill right here. So I'll turn the stroke off and then turn the fill on to just be a solid color, because it's really just going to be black. It's going to fit right here, because I figured the way to get this rounded corner of the shopping cart when it appears is to do a rounded rectangle, and we'll use a track matte as well to reveal it. Make this black. Now I'm going to keep it green for now, actually, just for placement. What I want to do is bring this down here to be below the shopping cart so that I can match it up. Make this roundness a little bit less, maybe like 15. It's going to end up being right there. And I'm just going to change this size to be a little bit wider and then move it over. There we go. That's it right there. So we don't have to worry about all this out here, and I'll show you why. We're going to use a track matte, which is going to be a masked solid layer. So I'm going to make, so this is the kind of filled up shopping cart. So I'm just going to name this shape layer. I'm going to call it shopping cart fill. Okay, next thing. I'm going to hide this layer for now. Command Y or Control Y to make a solid layer. I'll make this 500 by 500. I'm just going to call this cart matte. There it is. Just needs to cover up the card itself, about right there. Cool. Now, just going to use the pen tool to make a mask of the cart matte itself. Okay, there we go. Now I want to make sure that this matte needs to be inside the shopping cart like this. Okay, great. There's the matte and the shopping cart fill right below it. Now all I'm going to do is do the track matte pick whip right here for the shopping cart fill and select the cart matte. And there we go. Because I made the mask for this to match inside the cart, and I selected this layer as the track matte for here, this is how it works. So if I was going to go to this cart matte and actually select the mask and change it around, you can see how I'm revealing that green layer. So as long as the mask points are inside of the outline of the shopping cart, and I wanted to keep this one right here. Let me change this color real quick. This one I wanted to be right at the corner of the shopping cart, so when this mask comes up, it'll round out that corner and make it softer. If I went like this, you can see how it get cut off. So if I put it right there at that corner, then it's kind of perfect. And again, if I go back to the reference, you can see how that roundedness happens right there. That's what we want. Okay, great. So now, just to show you, if I was going to hit P for position on this layer, I can now animate it coming up like that. Now right here is where I want it to end. So this is great. I can just hit the stopwatch right here. This is the end point of where I want it to end. Then I can just drag the timeline playhead a little bit back and animate it down like this. There we go. It's filled up. It's not the kind of animation we want, obviously, right now. But we have this created now. And it's a really nice trick to know of using a solid layer with a mask as a matte for another layer. In this case, a rounded rectangle shape layer. Now again, I'm going to select these two layers because I can't help myself and select cyan as the layer color. So I know these are all together, like this. One more trick right now that might really help you. I don't use it a lot, but I know people like to use it, and it does help a lot to keep things organized. If I click this toggle switches and modes right here, there's these other switches. One of them is right here, the shy layer. Now, just like I can hide other objects, other layers in the timeline with this icon, I can actually hide layers in this composition by using the shy layer. So just to focus on the shopping cart right now, I'm going to shift select all the layers of all the other icons in this composition right here and select the shy layer. Now, nothing happens yet. You can see how the icons have changed until I select this button. It just says hides all layers for which the shy switch is set. If I click that, boom, they disappear from this composition layout right here, but they're still visible in the composition itself. They're just not here as layers. So it's really nice to keep things organized. I can do these two right here. Now, since this is already highlighted and turned on, if I just click this icon, they'll disappear automatically. So here we go. Now we just have to focus on the shopping cart icons and the mats and on the solid. It's a really nice way to keep things organized. If you feel yourself that you're getting overwhelmed with too many layers in a composition, don't forget the shy layer icon. Okay, here we go. Now we just can focus on these 4 layers. Now what I'm going to do, now that we have this animation set, I'm just going to bring this closer. That's good for now. And now that it's set up, I'm just going to change this to black. Like that. And there we go. Okay, the next thing I want to do is cut apart this cart and the wheels right here. So I'm just going to turn these off and just have the shopping cart itself. Now I'm going to duplicate the layer first, Command or Control D. I call this shopping cart, and then I'm going to call this one shopping cart wheels. Okay, I'm going to hide that. Now we just have the shopping cart itself. I'm going to go with the pen tool, and I'm going to make a mask, cutting it right here, like that. Now, because this other layer's turned off, we don't see the wheels. So I'll turn that wheels layer back on. Now if I turn the shopping cart off, now nothing's happened because we need to make the mask of this shopping cart with the wheels. Now we can either make our own mask, which is totally possible, but since we're just basically cutting apart 2 layers, what I can do is go to the masks of this layer right here, and I can just Command or Control copy and then paste it. Because it's the same layer, it'll all match up. Now, obviously, what I don't want is 2 of the same thing, I want to invert this mask. So I can just go right here with the drop down, take it from add to subtract. So what I'm doing is basically I'm subtracting the part that I've masked from the layer as opposed to adding it right here. So now I've got two layers like this, and they're cut apart using the same mask. I'm just inverting the way that they're being used. And I could also check this box too, just to show you. If I go back to add, check the box, it's the same thing. Okay. Now I'm going to want a little bit of overlap on the shopping cart wheels as this, when this shopping cart turns, when it rotates, I don't want it to reveal the wheels part. So what I'm going to do instead is really just move this down just a little bit, like that. You can't really even see anything. Now if I go into the shopping cart layer, hit Y to change the anchor point and move it down to right here where it's going to be turning, just to check if I rotate this. Perfect. Okay, that's all I need. I can't see anything happening, any separation as I'm rotating. So that's great. It's all figured out. Now it's an issue of parenting, and I think the best layer to parent everything to is going to be this shopping cart layer right here. So I'm going to just use the parent and link and do it this way. Again, I'm just going to undo. I'll show you something else too. I can control click all these layers, pick whip to that, and they all get selected. Now they're all parented to the shopping cart. So now if we just bring these back, and just to check, I'm going to move this up. Okay, great. Rotate. And they all rotate together. And the cool part here is I can rotate this layer, the parent layer, and then say I want to have this plus move independently. It'll still move in relation to its parent, but also you can animate its own movement. So that's great. There we go. This is all rigged up to be animated now. I'm going to go back here. I'm just going to move these keyframes down until later. Because the first thing I'm going to do is just animate this plus sign popping up and spinning. Now the good thing is, because it's its own layer, the anchor point is automatically in the middle. If I spin this around, it's not off center, it's not wobbly, so it's good. So I'm just going to select that, make a keyframe, Shift P for position, keyframe there. This will become the beginning and the end of the animation. I'm also just going to copy and paste those keyframes. And we can do the animation in between right here. Okay, so it pops up. It rotates like that. This one again, just because I want to get really nice, smooth animations on the position, I'm going to right-click the position and separate dimensions. So I can control the Y position a lot more easily. Now, I don't need the X position at all. Let me check the reference. I don't think so. Yeah. That movement in the X direction is actually from parenting and rotating this parent layer. So it's not actually moving to the left at all, it's just moving up, and then the cart is moving to the left. It actually doesn't really spin that much either. It just kind of, it actually spins only halfway. It only goes 180 degrees, really. And just it does a nice little pop and kind of like it falls, you know, in the way of gravity, which is really lively. Okay, so it doesn't really spin that much. That's way too much. And it doesn't move to the left either. So I'm just going to click the stopwatch for the X position. Now it's just going to move up. And I realize now it just needs to rotate half of a full rotation over the whole life. So I'm just going to delete this keyframe. And the second one right here, I'll just type in negative 180. And that's great. And I'm just going to move this down here. That's a good start. And let's go into the awesome graph editor. I'll start with the Y position. And it just needs to, it can pop up like that and come back down because we don't ever see it land. I'm actually going to have it move down a little bit like this so that when the cart fills up, it'll hide behind it. All we have to really do is just make this top, like kind of the peak of the animation, round that so it looks more like a gravity curve. Now I just hit the Easy Ease button to get the handle. And I'm just going to stretch this out so it pops up and stays up for a while and then falls down. Let's see what this looks like. That's nice. Okay, I like that. There we go. That's good. Rotation, I just want it to pop as well. So if I did that, now what if I tried like this? That's more like it. I don't want it to ease out or accelerate from this position. I want it to really pop from this position and then fall and kind of slow down into this other second keyframe. But this one could be a little bit more linear. You know what? Maybe it is right, actually, like this. That's a good start. Here is like, this is, you know, at least 40% of motion design time is playback over and over again, setting keyframes like this. But again, this is where the motion design goes from good to great. Okay, we got that. And now it's just kind of popping the card up and then having it rotate and bounce and come back to rest. So I'm going to start with these two keyframes, which will become the beginning and the end. About right here. Just going to rough this in. So I'm going to actually move those keyframes down so that I can just focus on the cart popping and coming to rest. So let's start with this. Okay, I know I'm gonna call it right now before I even start animating. I'm just gonna separate these dimensions as well for this, just to control that animation more. Because it's really nice to be able to control that, those like gravitational, like where they pop up in the air and they kind of they rest in the air and they come back down. Like that's the best way to do those and it's going to save you a lot of headaches and time, is to separate dimensions before we get into it. And there's also going to be a little bit of X, horizontal animation as well, so I'll just keep those keyframes going for now. And I'm just going to move this up and move it over a little bit. It's also going to rotate. Very rough. And then, so it's going to pop up and then come back down. I'm just going to copy and paste this first keyframe because that's going to be where the ground is. One more little bounce. So we'll get the bouncing first, the position of the bounce first, and then we'll do the rotation, the kind of springiness of the cart. Okay. Graph editor. Now actually this one and this one are going to need to be rounded because these are the bounces from the ground. Already it's a little bit better. I want this one to be a little bit closer so it's like more of a bounce. Let me check the reference. I see what's happening. So it bounces, comes down, bounces again, but the third time is not really a bounce, it's more of just a rotation of the cart. But it feels like a bounce. That's smart. Nice move. Yeah, so it is actually two bounces. Two bounces and a rotation. Okay. If I bring these together, I can see that this one and this one aren't actually there together. Okay, it's too slow obviously, and we can easily fix that. I just want to get this together first. Okay, so I don't want to ease these with the handles. I'm going to just select these two keyframes, and if I go right here to linear interpolation, it'll just go back to straight lines. Because what's happening is, it's kind of it is a constant move back to the original position, in the X direction at least. So, not good. I deleted that keyframe because it really, for the X direction, it only needs to be 3. Okay, so what I'm doing wrong here is it's moving back. It moves backwards until it hits the ground, then it comes forward. So what I'm doing wrong here is it starts to move forwards while it's still in the air. I need to have it move this keyframe to be right here for when the cart lands. There we go. Now it's going too far, but it's not going too far, it just needs to be finessed. But there we go. Yeah, so as we said before, the third bounce, quote unquote, is actually just a rotation. It's not really a bounce in the air. So here's the first bounce, bam, and then the second bounce. But then this third area right here, this space is going to be a bounce, like a fake bounce with the rotation of the cart. Okay, so the rotation is still going on. that's what's making it look weird right now. So yeah, here's the rotation, and here's the X and Y. Okay, so these need to be rounded as part of that kind of gravitational move. Make that third bounce right here. Nice and subtle. Ease this one. Okay, turn the graph editor off. I think this needs to be about right here. Okay, so we're finessing in a good spot. So now I'm going to add back in the plus sign. Like that. Okay. Now in the reference, it says that rotation animation needs to be done by the time the cart lands. Okay, great. So I just need to highlight these, hold down Alt, bring them in. Let's see, for when the cart lands about right. Yep, about right there. Okay. Okay, great. I also noticed in here, it actually spins the opposite direction. So mine's spinning this way. So we can just go into this last keyframe right here for the rotation and then just hit positive 180 instead of negative 180. Great. Okay, we got that. And then we can just add the fill back in. Okay, so one thing we're missing right now is are the wheels kind of popping up and giving that spring action. I also just want to give a little bit of rotation right here to the cart as well as it hits the ground. Just a nice little, just a quick little rotation, like a springy action about right here. Now this is going to be a little bit just kind of tedious. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So I want to keep this rotation where it is. So I'm just going to add a keyframe by clicking this button. And that's going to be where it starts from. And then it's going to, like, I'm going to do this a little bit. And then at the same time, I'm going to turn this one on. And put a keyframe right here where this one is. So they both start at the same time. And then have this pop up. Oh, there we go. And you get the anchor point in the right spot. Put it right here. Have this come up. So it actually, I need to move this down. There we go. Yep. So as it lands, we start this quick animation right here. And then it pops back. So I can just copy and paste these right here. Have these move a little bit farther down. And lands. This will be another quick animation of this shopping cart. Doing that. And since they're parented, I'm going to do this again. And then I'll just make this one 0 again. Let's see how that looks. It's a little bit weird. Okay, so what's happening here? Why is it going weird? Too many keyframes happening in right here. If I go to the graph editor, it should make more sense. Yep, it's right here. It's messy. This one right here. So it needs to be springier right here. It's almost a little bit too, it's a little bit too abrupt, which makes it unrealistic. And this part right here we'll get to. This is messy. All I gotta do right here though is just, I want to stretch this out so it like stays kind of springy for a little bit before it comes back down. And I think honestly this one can just go away, this keyframe. And maybe something like this. Let's see. I see what's going on here. This actually needs to almost go like that. Now for this cartwheels, I'm just going to make those easy E's so they're a little bit more rounded. Now I can see what's happening. It looks weird now because the cartwheel rotation and the cart rotations are not matching up. You can see right here, yeah. So this, let's see. This one needs to come over here. This one needs to happen right here, really. So my computer crashed. I honestly never seen that happen before in the graph editor. So here we are again. I just want to tweak, really just need to tweak that last little bounce right there, this little wobble, which I think is just deleting one of these keyframes right here. There's just too many bounces going on. So if I go into the graph editor, okay, value graph, that's it right there. It looks weird. I think I just need to delete this. Let's see how this looks. That's pretty good. that's pretty much it. Here's another trick that's really helpful to know in After Effects. I really just want to just loop a certain section, right? I want to just use the work area, which is this, not this right here, but this right here. This is the work area. So I can put this right here like that, and it'll just loop this one part. Super helpful. So I can actually just drag this too. If I wanted to just have this section loop over and over again. I also have shortcuts. B and N. If I hit B right here, the beginning of the work area will come to the playhead. And with the playhead right here and hit N, the end of it moves right there. So B, N. Beginning, and then end. And I can just drag this around too. So, helpful tool for these types of situations right here to just loop a specific section. That is it. Everything is done. Now all we want to do is separate these out into different compositions so they can be their own icons, and then export them as Lottie files. Lottie files are a revolution in what's happening right now with motion design. So it's important to know this workflow, what it's used for, and how to make them. So now I hope you can see in these icons, this is the first one, second one, third one, fourth one. I think there's actually a pretty marked difference in the quality from the beginning to the end. I think these icons show a progression in the complexity and the nuance in the animations that go on in these icons. These first ones are okay, honestly. I obviously would spend more time tweaking them to have a lot more finesse, but these were just kind of the beginning. I think with this one, the lock, we start to see more finesse and subtlety in the animations, and you can see how they can be really complicated in the way that the graph editor and the different animations interact. And I think in this one, in the shopping cart, it definitely shows those complexities in these fine details in the animation that really make it shine, in my opinion. So I just want you to take a second and appreciate, now that you're at this part in the shopping cart and at the end of this tutorial, as far as animating goes, I hope that you have gotten more comfortable with how this works. And I'll say it again, this is Karate Kid, Mr. Miyagi style of teaching, using the same things over and over again until we're really comfortable with them. And this is a really important part of making animation really finished and really nice.